Tango del Ángel by Astor Piazzolla, performed in the K-Bach Performance Studio by accordion player Gabe Hall Rodriguez, along with the Driftwood Quintet. It's from the new album El Tango Nuevo, Ángeles y Diablos, which is just out. Bass clarinetist Dominique Hawley is one of the founding members of the Driftwood Quintet. It's great to have you back in the studio.
It's a pleasure to be back. I love to be here and play some beautiful music for your audience. So.
Boy, do you have some great music on this album. Tell us about the album. What made you want to arrange and record these tangos by Piazzolla?
So I'm just a big fan of Piazzolla's music in general. 2-3 years ago, we were down in Glendale doing a concert, and we did just a handful of these pieces. I did just the Angel pieces by Piazzolla. So we had Gabe play along with us. And we learned from that one concert that actually reed quintet and accordion actually sound great together. And I was surprised that I had never really heard a recording of that ensemble before. So then I decided to do some more digging, and I found the rest of these pieces that are, themed around Angels and Demons by Piazzolla. And I just put them all together. We arranged them as a group, and we kind of told a story through the titles.
And you've been playing these at different places around the state, too, kind of preparing for this album, right?
Yeah, we, like I mentioned, we first performed a handful of these 2 years ago, and then when we committed to recording this album back in late October, we did a local tour, and we played down in Glendale again, we played in Peoria, we played in Coconino up in Flagstaff, and we did a performance up in Tucson as well.
Tell us a little bit about the process of making the recording. It's not just as simply as you can't snap your fingers and there it is. How did this come about?
Yeah, it's great. I think we planned it really well, because we did a whole week of performances, and that really helped us when we hit the studio at the end of that, because we were so locked in playing it. And, another good thing about that is when you're performing it so many times, you can experiment with different things. You can see what works, what doesn't work. So the product that we ended up with through the recording process, we recorded in about over 2 or 3 different days of in the studio, and then another couple days of just editing, and then some more days of mixing, and then the mastering. And then we were down working with Clark Rigsby over at Tempest Recording, and he's just like, a world-class engineer. He's worked with everyone. If you name it, he's probably worked with them. So we were really privileged to be able to work with him and use his expertise to craft something that's really, really fun.
Yeah, I was interested in the funding of it, too, because I've seen that you crowdsourced some of the funding for it. How did that process work?
We don't do a lot of crowdfunding in our work as Driftwood Quintet. We're kind of like a grassroots organization. We do a lot of our regular performance funding through grants that we get from different city organizations and arts organizations. But for this particular project, we decided to go with crowdfunding, and we used Kickstarter, and we had a really good team. Most of it was our founding members, myself and Ben, and then Jamie as well, our oboe player, did a lot of work as well. Just on the back end, getting all the rewards in place, getting all the stickers, all the merchandise, all the T-shirts, all that lined up. Ben did a really good job of managing our Kickstarter campaign in general, making sure that all of our backers got the messages that they needed, they were in the loop, and kind of joining us on the journey of creating this album. Because I think if you can bring people in on the process and not just a peer, at the end of the day, I think they get as excited or more excited in it than you can. So,
and like I said, it was exciting for me to see
Yeah.
that you were doing that. You've brought some more music in by Piazzolla from the new album. You'll be playing Milonga del Angel and then Tango del Diablo. Tell us
Yeah.
about why you put these two pieces together kind of as a mini set.
Because I'm really a fan of programmatic music. That's kind of the idea, where the music itself can tell a story. And the full album, when you arrange the titles of the pieces, it kind of tells a story that kind of loosely lines up with the original inspiration that Piazzolla had when he wrote these pieces. But so for the setting today, I was like, cool, what's like a smaller story we can tell with these titles? So we started with the Tango del Angel, which normally in our record is the penultimate piece. Here it starts our set today. And then we move into the Milonga, which is a really good piece that kind of lets us breathe a little bit more. It's not so tight. It offers a little bit more room for a little bit more improvisation, a little bit more embellishment. And then we move to the only Diablo piece we're playing today, which is the Tango del Diablo. And I chose that one because I think it really encapsulates that like Diablo, that devil feeling, with just how harsh and how dissonant it is, and how it tries to trick you with these more consonant areas that go right back into the dissonance. So you never really feel stable. And then I think that works really well when we eventually transition to the last piece, which is the Resurrection del Angel, which is definitely one of the more standout pieces of the whole CD, because it's one of the longer movements. It has a really good, nice solo that lets Gabe breathe and play by himself without us getting in the way of him. So we have a nice little tight micro story that's kind of still related to the full album, but its own little journey.
Well, let's hear two of those three pieces you talked about, Milonga del Angel and Tango del Diablo. This is the Driftwood Quintet, English hornist and oboist Jamie Rivers, clarinetist Kobe Slavin, saxophonist Jade Dethridge, bassoonist Ben Paley, and bass clarinetist Dominique Hawley. They're joined by Gabe Hall Rodriguez on the accordion on 89.5 Classical K-Bach. Two pieces by Astor Piazzolla from the K-Bach Performance Studio, Tango del Diablo, and before that, Milonga del Ángel. We heard accordion virtuoso Gabe Hall Rodriguez and the Driftwood Quintet, 5 virtuosos of their own. Oboist and English hornist Jamie Rivers, she played the English horn on those pieces. Clarinetist Kobe Slavin, saxophonist Jade Deathridge, bassoonist Ben Paley, and bass clarinetist Dominique Hawley. It's from the new album called El Tango Nuevo, Ángeles y Diablos, which is just out and available on the Quintet's page on Bandcamp. Dominique, the album tells a specific story in music. Can you dig into that a little bit for us?
Yeah, so, originally when Piazzolla crafted this work, it was because one of his friends had asked for incidental music for a play. And that play, the story of it was that, there's this barrio where an angel comes down to save the souls of the citizens in this town. And in the course of that journey, one of the heights of the play is when there's a knife fight that the angel tries to get in the middle of and stop. And in the course of that fight, the angel gets stabbed and dies. And then by the end of the play, the angel is resurrected. So if I go through the titles real quickly of the movements, we start with Introducción al Ángel, where the angel comes down. Then we move on to Milonga del Ángel. And then we have our first Diablo movement, Romance del Diablo. And that's when the Diablo first makes its appearance. And then that goes right into the Tango del Diablo. So I like to think that, the angel arrives, does this milonga to introduce itself, and then the Diablo tries to seduce us with this romance. The romance doesn't work. So, when honey doesn't work, you switch to vinegar, So Tango del Diablo, it's that harsh movement that you just heard. And then we move on to the Muerte del Ángel, which is Piazzolla's version of a fugue, And in the course of this fugue, you hear these claps and these snaps that mimic the knife fight. And then the angel dies in Muerte, and that takes us to Vayamos al Diablo, which means like we're going to the devil, we're going to hell. And that movement is a very quick, fast, rhythmic driving piece where you kind of feel the sense of falling and tumbling. And then when we're in hell, there's this movement called Tango del Ángel. So I always like to imagine that like when the angel is in hell, we think it's defeated, but then, it shows itself again. And then through this tango that the angel does, it's the first time we hear the actual angel tango, it allows it to resurrect itself, and that moves us into the final movement, Resurrection del Ángel. And then I think that movement's really nice as an ending because, like as I mentioned, we have that really nice, lovely accordion solo that I feel like it really just is a nice bookend for the whole piece. So.
And we're going to hear that in just a bit, but I do want to ask about the accordion. Gabe, I know that Piazzolla played the bandoneon, which is similar, I guess, to the accordion, but you've chosen to play the accordion in this. Tell us a little bit about the differences between the instruments and why you chose the accordion.
Well, I guess the main reason I chose the accordion is because it's a lot easier to play. The bandoneon and the accordion are related in the way that a flute and a clarinet are related. That they are in the same family of instruments. They're both free reed instruments, but when we're thinking about the layout of the buttons, the way that the whole instrument is sort of designed, still designed to push air through a reed, but how those reeds are laid out and how the buttons, or in this case the keyboard, is laid out is much different. My accordion is a standard accordion, and it's unisonoric, so it means that one note plays the same note in and out. If you press like a C on the keyboard, it's going to be a C, no matter which direction you're going. The bandoneon is not. The bandoneon is almost like playing 4 instruments at once because you have the right-hand side that is a system that's laid out completely illogically. And then the left-hand system, same thing, and they're not related. And then when you change directions, all the notes change. So you could be playing the same button, but you go in and out, and it goes from an A to a C sharp. And it's not... it is, like I said, it is illogical. I think Piazzolla said it's like a masochist's instrument, somebody who just, likes the pain of learning something so diabolical.
And that's why you chose the accordion, because you're not choosing the pain.
No, I don't want the pain.
Well, let's end this visit with the Driftwood Quintet with Resurrection of the Angel, Resurrección del Ángel by Astor Piazzolla. Gabe Hall Rodriguez, who you just heard, the Driftwood Quintet right here in the K-Bach Performance Studio on 89.5 Classical K-Bach. Resurrection del Ángel by Astor Piazzolla. It's the final piece on the new album by the Driftwood Quintet and accordion player Gabe Hall Rodriguez. The Driftwood Quintet is comprised of oboist and English hornist Jamie Rivers, clarinetist Kobe Slavin, saxophonist Jay Dethridge, bassoonist Ben Paley, and bass clarinetist Dominique Hawley. And you heard it live in the K-Bach Performance Studio. Thanks to all of you for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
What a treat to have you here. You can learn more about the Driftwood Quintet at their website, driftwoodquintet.com. Their new album is called El Tango Nuevo, Ángeles y Diablos. It's just out and available on the Quintet's page on Bandcamp, where you can stream it. You can also stream it on all of the streaming platforms, Spotify and the like. Dario Miranda was our recording engineer. I'm Greg Kostraba. You can hear this interview and performance again at our website, performance.kbach.org.